Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm incredibly glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So we are exploring a really comprehensive roadmap today. It's based on this fascinating source document titled The Centaur Champion: Evolution of AI Thought Partnership.
Mm.
And, if you have spent any time recently feeling just completely overwhelmed by the flood of new artificial intelligence tools, or if there's this nagging worry in the back of your mind about falling behind in your industry, well, our mission today is to unpack a framework that completely reframes how you view your entire career trajectory.
It really is a fundamental reframing. I mean, we are moving away from an era where professionals merely use technology as a tool, right?
Mhm.
We're stepping into an environment where we actively collaborate with intelligence.
Right.
And looking at this through a broader analytical lens, this is not just some fleeting software trend. We are looking at a structural shift in human cognition. It's about how we deliver value, which brings us to a very distinct inflection point right now
Mm.
in the year 2026.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand where we're standing in 2026, we actually have to look backward first.
Yeah, context is everything here.
Exactly. And one of the most fascinating historical through lines we found in our research is that AI thought partnership isn't actually a new concept at all. The dynamics of it go all the way back to ancient Greece.
They really do.
You could argue that the very first prompt engineer was actually Socrates.
That historical parallel is just incredibly rich. I mean, the Socratic method is, at its core, the original iterative feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
Socrates never just handed people answers. He viewed himself as a midwife to knowledge. The Greek term for this is maiatikos. The philosophy there is that profound insights are birthed through rigorous, ongoing dialogue.
Right, so one question naturally leads to another.
Exactly. You're slowly uncovering underlying truths, rather than just accepting a single static source of authority.
Right.
And when you interact with a modern reasoning model today, you are applying that exact same principle.
You aren't just asking a calculator to spit out a single number.
No, not at all. You are coaxing out complex, multi-layered reasoning through a conversational dialogue.
I really love that visualization. The system is the thought partner, but you are the midwife delivering the actual idea.
That's the dynamic.
And that dynamic, it didn't stop in ancient Greece either. If we jump forward to the Renaissance, we see the exact same architecture in the workshop model, the bottega.
Yes, the Italian bottega system.
When we think of master artists, like Leonardo da Vinci or Andrea del Verrocchio, we tend to imagine them alone in a room just painting every single leaf on every single tree.
Sweating over the canvas at 3 a.m.
Right. But that isn't actually how masterpieces were created.
Far from it. The master artist was responsible for the grand vision. They executed the highly complex, emotionally resonant elements of the painting.
The countenances.
Exactly, what they call the countenances, which essentially meant capturing the literal soul of the subject on the canvas. But to handle the rest of it, they relied on a large suite of apprentices.
The Garzoni.
The Garzoni, yes. And they executed the repetitive, time-consuming background tasks.
So the apprentices are the ones mixing the physical pigments, prepping the massive canvases, filling in the generic blue skies.
Painting the standard drapery, doing the underpainting. The master leverages the apprentices to scale their own genius.
It's a scaling mechanism.
Precisely. And there's another powerful historical figure in the text that mirrors this perfectly, which is John Dee.
Oh, yes. The advisor to Queen Elizabeth I.
Right. He served as a mathematician, an astronomer, and a strategic advisor to the Queen. Dee's role was essentially to synthesize overwhelming amounts of raw data.
Because the world was expanding so fast then.
Rapidly. He took complex navigation charts, global mathematics, philosophical texts, and he distilled them all into predictive models for global expansion.
He was basically doing the heavy mental lifting, filtering the noise so the Queen didn't have to.
He provided the raw cognitive horsepower.
But Queen Elizabeth provided the sovereign intent.
Exactly. She held the ultimate authority. She made the final, impactful decisions based on that synthesized, highly refined knowledge that Dee provided.
Which brings us to a massive realization for you listening right now. In 2026, you are the master artist. You are the monarch.
You hold the sovereign intent.
These autonomous agents are your digital apprentices. They are your modern-day John Dee. You provide the vision and the soul of the project, while they provide the raw cognitive horsepower.
And mapping that historical arc onto our modern timeline clarifies exactly how we arrived at this current inflection point.
Yeah.
If we look at the progression over the last few years, The evolution of the modern worker is actually quite stark,
Let's walk through that timeline to really ground this for everyone. Think back to 2024.
which feels like a lifetime ago now.
It really does. At that point, the baseline requirement for most white-collar jobs was just basic digital literacy.
Just knowing how to use the software.
Right. You needed to know how to navigate online environments, maybe run some pivot tables in Excel, and communicate across siloed platforms like Slack or Teams. I remember personally feeling like a total wizard just for asking a basic chatbot to drag a polite email to a vendor.
We all did.
But the divide in the workforce was already shifting right then. It was no longer about whether you had access to software. It was about whether you were using it for a strategic advantage.
And the traditional corporate infrastructure was actually caught significantly off guard by how fast that shift happened.
Well, Tex highlights a crazy stat about that.
It does. In 2024, over 85% of students and teachers had integrated generative AI into their daily workflows before major corporate training programs even launched.
That's wild. The schools were moving faster than the Fortune 500 companies.
The broader population was just moving faster than the institutions. So basic digital literacy became insufficient almost overnight, primarily because it lacked strategic orchestration. People were still just performing isolated tasks rather than managing end-to-end processes.
Then we hit 2025, which the text calls the era of AI proficiency. This is where we moved away from shallow prompting.
Shallow prompting being that basic 2024 behavior you mentioned.
Right, just saying, hey, write this email or summarize this PDF. In 2025, professionals started using AI as a dedicated co-pilot.
And that transition to a co-pilot model meant users were applying strategic frameworks. They started assigning the AI specific personas. They were feeding it highly structured data to yield high-fidelity, professional-grade outputs.
There's a great practical example of this in the source material regarding interview orchestration.
Oh, the voice-to-voice models, yes.
Yeah, candidates began using these voice models to simulate real-time, high-pressure behavioral interviews. They would literally have the AI grill them on their own resume to identify logical gaps or filler words before they ever sat down with a human hiring manager.
They were also doing what's called resume alignment. They realized that applicant tracking systems, the software that companies use to filter resumes, were becoming semantic-based.
Can you break down semantic-based for anyone unfamiliar with that term?
Sure, a semantic-based system doesn't just look for exact keyword matches like the phrase project management. It actually understands the contextual meaning of your experience.
It's reading between the lines.
Exactly. It can infer that if you led a cross-functional team to deliver a software product, you possess project management skills, even if you didn't explicitly use those exact words.
So professionals in 2025 used reasoning models to align their experience perfectly with those semantic nuances.
Right, ensuring their resumes ranked in the top tier. We also saw incredible leaps in research synthesis around that time.
The financial analysts.
Yes, analysts were feeding thousands of pages of dense financial transcripts into a copilot and asking it to cross-reference data points in minutes. They were finding untapped market niches that would have taken humans weeks to spot.
But as amazing as all of that was, it was still a co-pilot dynamic.
That's the key distinction.
The human was sitting in the driver's seat, holding the steering wheel, actively guiding every single step of the interaction.
Which brings us to the present day, 2026, the era of the Centaur champion.
The defining question in the marketplace has fundamentally changed now. Employers are no longer asking, can you use AI?
They assume you can. It's a given.
The question is now, can you collaborate with intelligence?
That distinction is the core of this entire deep dive.
So what does it actually mean to collaborate with intelligence rather than just use it as a tool?
It means transitioning to agentic collaboration. Unlike the passive software of 2024 or the helpful but dependent co-pilots of 2025, the agents we interact with today operate with real autonomy.
They use the observe, plan, act cycle.
Precisely. You give them a goal, and they autonomously observe the digital environment. Then they plan a multi-step sequence to achieve that goal, and then they actually take action across different software platforms without you having to click any buttons.
They're doing the clicking for you.
Yes. They only escalate an issue back to you when a decision requires genuine human judgment.
So, practically speaking, they might notice an error in a spreadsheet, realize that the error affects a presentation deck, update the deck, and draft an email to the client all in the background.
and they just ask you to review the final email before hitting send.
That is incredible.
Major global firms are already structured entirely around this capability today. Organizations like McKinsey, BCG, and Accenture utilize what's called a tripartite workforce.
Tripartite, meaning three parts.
Right. Instead of just human employees, their teams consist of three distinct groups. Human employees, AI agents, and robotic collaborators.
Often called cobots.
Exactly. So a single human consultant is essentially managing a team of digital colleagues that handle the vast majority of routine data processing and initial analysis.
Okay, so if you are listening to this right now and wondering how you actually transition from being a standard employee to becoming one of these Centaur champions, our research outlines a very specific 5-step career roadmap. Let's break down each step so you can start applying this tomorrow. Where do we begin?
Step 1 is owning a layer. The era of the pure jack-of-all-trades generalist is completely fading out. To stand out today, you need to build a specialist moat.
A moat to protect your value.
Yes. This requires choosing a highly specific domain layer, say supply chain logistics, corporate finance, or healthcare administration.
And then you combine that with a specific AI capability layer.
Right. Things like data orchestration, model evaluation, or AI governance.
So instead of just being a standard supply chain manager, you become the expert in orchestrating autonomous agents specifically for global shipping logistics. You own the intersection of those two spheres.
And that specific combination makes you incredibly difficult to replace.
Which is exactly what you want.
Once you've defined that layer, you move to step 2, which is the continuous task audit. This is a highly practical, everyday exercise.
You literally catalog every single task you perform in a given week.
Every single one. Then you tag each task into categories. Is it routine, analytical, relational, or strategic? Your immediate goal here is to systematically offload 30 to 50% of your routine clerical work to automated agents.
But wait, I can hear the objection already from the listeners. If I figure out how to automate 50% of my job, isn't there a massive risk that my employer will just realize they only need half of me and my role becomes obsolete?
That is the most common fear, absolutely. But it completely misunderstands the Centaur model.
How so?
You are not automating yourself out of a job. You are automating the lowest value parts of your job so you can scale the highest value parts.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you free up 20 hours a week, you don't just go home early. You use those 20 hours to focus on strategic growth, complex problem solving, and relationship building.
The things that actually drive revenue and get you promoted.
Exactly. You transition from being a task doer to an orchestrator.
Which leads perfectly into step 3, orchestration.
Wow.
We touched on this earlier, but it means moving entirely beyond chatbots.
Yes, chatbots are ancient history in this context. You are learning to use agentic platforms to build multi-tool systems. You're designing end-to-end pipelines that can handle complex workflows and unexpected variables.
And a critical part of orchestration is learning to manage things like data drift.
Data drift is a huge concept to understand. It occurs when the real-world information that your AI model relies on begins to change over time, which can eventually make its outputs less accurate.
Because the world changes, but the model's original data doesn't.
Exactly. A true orchestrator builds systems that actively monitor for that drift and adapt to it automatically, without the system breaking down and requiring manual repair.
This sounds incredibly technical, though. If someone listening doesn't have a background in computer science, how do they bridge that gap?
This is where we return to the Tony Stark analogy. You don't need to know how to build the arc reactor from scratch. You just need to know how to command the Jarvis system.
The AI is Jarvis.
Right. You are linking different digital environments, your email client, your customer relationship manager, your analytics dashboard, so they communicate seamlessly.
You are the architect of finding the workflow.
While no-code and low-code platforms translate your intent into the actual technical connections.
Okay, so once you've built these systems, you have to actually prove it to the market. Which brings us to step 4, building a strategic intelligence portfolio.
The static one-page PDF resume is just no longer enough to differentiate you. Employers want undeniable proof of work.
They want to see the actual mechanics of what you've built.
Did you design an agentic customer service workflow? Did you orchestrate a predictive analytics dashboard? And more importantly, they want to see the metrics. How did this system actually move the needle for the business?
Our research mentions candidates building RAG pipelines to prove their value. Can we demystify what an RAG pipeline actually is for someone who hasn't built one yet?
Certainly. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. In simple terms, instead of asking a general AI model a question and just hoping it knows the answer from the vast open internet, a RAG pipeline restricts the AI.
It boxes it in.
Yes. It gives the model a very specific private library of your own company's internal documents, policies, or financial histories. It essentially tells the AI, retrieve the answer only from this specific vault of data, and then generate your response.
Which ensures highly accurate, context-specific outputs without the risk of the AI hallucinating false information.
Precisely. And showcasing that you can build a system like that proves you understand enterprise-level data security and utility.
That is such a powerful differentiator. And it brings us to step 5, which beautifully balances out all of this technical architecture we've been talking about. Step 5 is cultivating human-only traits.
This point really cannot be overstated. As these systems absorb the logic, the coding, and the heavy data processing, the marketplace will pay an enormous premium for the elements a machine simply cannot experience or replicate.
We're talking about genuine empathy, nuanced human judgment, and complex ethical reasoning.
The machine provides the raw horsepower, but the human core provides the moral direction.
To make this completely concrete, the source document contrasts how a traditional candidate speaks in a job interview versus how a Centaur champion speaks. The difference is night and day.
It's a completely different language.
A traditional candidate, relying on older paradigms, might sit in an interview and say, I researched the annual report to find key data points.
Whereas a Centaur champion frames the exact same objective by saying, I orchestrated a retrieval-augmented generation pipeline that reduced our data synthesis time by 80%, which allowed me to uncover 3 new potential revenue streams.
It's just so much more impactful. Or a traditional candidate might say, I am highly proficient in SQL and Salesforce.
The Centaur champion says, I engineered a cross-platform agent ecosystem that connected our CRM to our database, reducing the analyst cycle time from 240 hours down to just 1 hour.
Let's pause on that for a second. From 240 hours down to 1 hour, that isn't just an exaggeration for an interview.
No, it's reality.
That represents a team of analysts spending weeks pulling data, cleaning it, formatting it, versus an orchestrated system doing it autonomously over a lunch break. When you present yourself like that, you are no longer interviewing as a single employee.
You are essentially bringing an entire automated department with you to the job.
Your perceived value fundamentally shifts. The employer is no longer hiring you merely for your individual labor. They're hiring you for your architectural capability.
You are demonstrating the ability to govern a scalable system that creates exponential value for the firm.
So this brings up the inevitable elephant in the room. If this framework is so demonstrably powerful, and if it saves hundreds of hours while boosting your market value, why is there still so much resistance out there? Why isn't every single professional racing to adopt this tomorrow?
The psychological barriers are actually quite profound, and our research dedicates significant time to analyzing them. The primary driver of this resistance is a cognitive bias known as loss aversion.
Loss aversion.
As humans, we feel the psychological pain of losing our status or competence far more acutely than we feel the joy of gaining a new capability.
We hate losing the things we're good at more than we love learning new tricks.
Yes, and in the workplace, this manifests as identity threat. Imagine a professional who has spent 20 years mastering the highly complex, tedious parts of their job. They are the go-to person for that difficult task.
Everyone relies on them.
Exactly. Suddenly, a new technology arrives that can do the heavy lifting in seconds. They experience a quiet erosion of their competence. They ask themselves, if a machine can do the hardest part of my job, who am I in this organization? What is my actual value?
That is incredibly validating for anyone feeling anxious right now. It is a very real, very human fear to feel like your hard-earned expertise is suddenly just a commodity.
It is entirely rational. And compounding that fear is technostress. The sheer volume of new tools, updates, and platforms being released every single week creates an overwhelming cognitive load.
You just can't keep up.
For many, the natural coping mechanism is to simply disengage entirely. But perhaps the most insidious barrier of all is what sociologists call the competence penalty.
This concept fascinated me. It's essentially a social bias within the office culture itself.
That's right. Some employees actively resist utilizing AI tools because they perceive that their peers or their managers will view it as cheating.
There is a deeply ingrained cultural notion that work must be difficult to be valuable.
Yes. They worry they will be penalized socially or professionally for not doing the work the traditional hard way.
To break through that specific mental block, there's an analogy in the text regarding the Industrial Revolution that perfectly captures what we are experiencing right now.
The factory analogy.
Exactly. When major factories first transitioned from steam power to electricity, they didn't see any immediate productivity gains. The owners were completely baffled.
The reason was that they were just using the new electricity to power their massive old steam engines. They kept the exact same factory layout with everything crowded around a central drive shaft.
The breakthrough didn't happen until a new generation of managers realized that electricity allowed them to place a motor on every individual workbench.
They had to completely reimagine and rebuild the entire layout of the factory to unlock the exponential efficiency.
That is the perfect metaphor for your career right now. You cannot just bolt artificial intelligence onto your old resume or your old daily routine.
You can't just use it to power your old steam engine.
You have to fundamentally reimagine your entire professional layout. You have to rebuild your value proposition from the ground up as an orchestrator, not a task doer.
And the most prominent voices in technology and strategy echo this exact sentiment. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, summarized it perfectly when he said, "AI will not replace you. The person using AI will."
We also see this in chess. Garry Kasparov, the grandmaster, has spoken extensively about how the strongest chess entities in the world are not humans playing alone, nor are they machines playing alone.
The highest level of play comes from a human operating in perfect synergy with a machine.
Sam Altman has framed this economic shift by noting that AI will essentially deflate the cost of cognition.
As the cost of basic reasoning drops to near zero, the premium placed on human direction and curation just skyrockets. Jeannie Romedy has similarly emphasized that this era is entirely about enhancing human capability, not replacing the human element.
So as you integrate all of this, how should you visualize your new daily reality? If you are a Centaur champion, you are the orchestra conductor.
You no longer need to know how to play the violin, the cello, and the timpani perfectly.
Your job is to stand at the podium, understand the sheet music, and ensure the entire digital orchestra is playing in perfect synchronization to create the symphony.
Returning to our earlier analogy, you are wearing the Tony Stark suit. The AI is your Jarvis system, handling the thousands of microcalculations, the targeting, and the environmental scanning.
But you remain the pilot. You are the one deciding where the suit flies. Let's bring this all together. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, from the ancient Socratic method of coaxing out ideas, all the way to engineering cross-platform ecosystems in 2026. If you take one thing away from this deep dive, let it be this. Your career moving forward is no longer defined by what you can manually execute with your own two hands.
It is defined entirely by what you can orchestrate.
You are stepping out of the role of an individual contributor and stepping into the role of a department head, even if you are just a team of one. So the next time you step into an interview or pitch a new initiative, do not just hand them a static resume of your past tasks. Show them your symphony.
As you step into this new framework, this does raise one final, profound consideration for you to mull over. We discussed the concept of providing the moral compass, where your AI agents act with incredible autonomous efficiency in their observed plan X cycles. But as you construct this digital workshop and rely on it more heavily, what happens in that inevitable moment when your messy, unique human intuition fundamentally disagrees with the perfectly optimized logic of your AI? In the era of the Centaur champion, how will you decide when to trust the flawless data of the machine and when to boldly overrule it with your human soul?